name is Tzvi Lebetkin, the rabbi from another planet. Please like, share, and subscribe, and ring that little bell. Ring the little bell so you'll be notified when new videos drop. So we are back. We are back on a journey into what us religious Jews call Shmirat HaLashon, guarding your language, right? These are the laws of holy speech. And you know, for me, I don't think this is something you need to be Jewish for. I think this is something that will enrich everybody's life, which is one of the reasons I'm doing it. Actually, I'll give a briefest introduction as to why we're going on these things. I've been off for a few days, right? I've been off all this week because I was really sick. I got really sick on when was it? Sunday night. And I literally couldn't move on Monday. I mean, well, I moved a bit, you know, not much, right? Somebody phoned. I couldn't answer the phone. I was really not good. Today's the first day I'm feeling mostly normal, right? I mean, for me, obviously. So yes, I apologize anyway. I am back. What day are we up? So we're up to day, I think 7 or 8. I can't remember. This is a 180-day program. Normally the videos will be about between 5 and 10 minutes long, maybe 15. I don't know. Maybe longer days. I'm doing a brief introduction. What is a brief introduction? Why are we doing this? Well, let's go back to the basics. Do you believe in God? Actually, it doesn't matter if you believe in God or not, right? I'm explaining it to the from the Orthodox Jewish perspective. We think there's a God, right? When I say we, some of it, we think there's a God, right? We think there's a Judeo-Christian God. So what does that God want? And he created everything, all reality, everything, us. What does that God want? Why did he bother making us and creating this reality? Well, essentially so we can have pleasure. Because one thing God is altruistic. All positive qualities are found within God. Now, if you're creating a universe based on your own essence, you will probably have all your positive qualities be positive qualities for that universe as well. So it's not that confusing. That, you know, that's the way it worked out. But basically, God wants us to be happy. So what does that mean? Happiness doesn't come cheap. Happiness doesn't come free. Happiness doesn't come easily. You have to decide and you have to work towards happiness, right? You have to, and I think a lot of that is spiritual work, right? Spiritual work towards happiness. So a basic understanding of reality is it's again, we believe God is real, right? We believe God is infinite. We believe God is one. There is only God, right? And God pulled back his essence to create this reality, and we are in fact bits of God, right? God is essentially like the Force in Star Wars. It surrounds us, it penetrates us, it binds the universe together. But also thinking entity and feeling, and it has a very clear idea about what is good and what is bad. Now, if one pursues goodness, it is hard, it is difficult, right? But ultimately you get more happiness, right? More happiness is reflected in unity, right? That's one of the central things that God wants. Unity. Why? Because that reflects the reality of the situation that we live in, which is God being infinite. We are all part of one whole, right? So the most fundamental I would say, expression, that's the word I was looking for, expression of that in Jewish law. And Jewish law is essentially where our culture is, where Jewish culture is, which is a system of robust, intense arguments by people who vehemently disagree, right? But are happy to disagree with each other. So that's expressed through these laws of guarding one's speech. Guarding one's speech from speaking badly, of causing division between us. Now, the real reason I'm doing this is because I feel in this day and age, in my personal lived experience, this thing, Lashon Hara, is completely out of control. I only know my little town, right? My little town, I would say, was somewhat idyllic, right? It really was absolutely wonderful in that it was really unique. We had a synagogue, right, which lots of different types of Jews felt comfortable going into, right? It was very, very diverse, which I know that is normally a buzzword for bad things nowadays, but it really was, because Jews normally are very fractious, right? Jews normally get upset about the least little things, the least little differences, and yeah, we are a very fractious people. If you ever seen Life of Brian, right? There's a great part in it where they're at the Colosseum, and you got all the different Jewish revolutionary groups against the Romans, right? And they're all tiny, and they're all pathetic, and they're all pitiful because they all hate each other. Right, that's essentially the lesson. Obviously, I think there are nations where there is unity as a what's the word I'm thinking of? There is unity as a positive in society, right? As a positive to be unified, and those societies are extremely functional, right? They do they're functional and very, 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 very powerful, right? Because that's the power of unity. What's the best way to destroy unity? It's this thing: evil speech, lashon hara, talking crap about each other, right? So again, in my life, in my lived experience, we had an explosion of that in my town. And the weird thing was, this used to be the hugest deal. I became religious in late 1990, right? And it was a really big thing. There were like these daily work programs. It was huge, right? Everybody knew about lashon hara, or like everybody knew to avoid it, right? Or at least if you couldn't, it's a thing you shoot for, right? Even if you fail, it's a goal that you should have. So we had this explosion of it, and I think what confused most people is it exploded, I think, from and around a former rabbi we had here, who's now fortunately unemployed, and I would say unemployable, right? He got himself in a difficult situation. He came into conflict with me quite severely because I thought he was going against the stated will of God. We call it the Torah in Judaism. We're going against stated will of God, against Jewish law, right? He couldn't defend himself. Essentially, he couldn't my question to him was, can you please justify in Jewish law why you have made this decision? And that's when everything fell apart, right? That blew up hugely. And the sea of lashon hara, right? The sea of we call treif. You know what kosher is. Treif is the opposite of that. That I personally witnessed. It still boggles my mind today, right? We have this other concept called avera gerer avera, right? If you do one sin, it will lead to more, it will lead to more, it will lead to more. So a lot of people, right, in my community and in most religious Jewish communities around the world have this thing built into them. I mean, not so much for me. I wasn't brought up religious, right? And I'm a child of the 70s, so I'm basically distrustful of authority at the best of times. But this one was clearly violating Jewish law, right? Clearly, right? But I think most people, their brains couldn't. It snapped them, right? It literally snapped them by why, because they said, "Oh no, it's fine, don't worry about it." And then he gave this public address where he massively violated the laws. I was like, "What the hell?" Right? Well, and everyone was silent. Everybody was silent. Everyone was like, "Oh, okay." But about a year later, the normies kind of finally realized that the synagogue was not going to continue, right? Because I was gone, about a third of the synagogue was gone. This was during COVID. Nobody was coming back. So they finally, I think somewhat begrudgingly, tried to, well, they couldn't oust him, essentially. They had to wait for his contract to run out, right? Anyway, my feeling it was somewhat begrudging. But here's the weird thing, right? Here's why I'm really doing this. In the wake of that, I still find this absolutely extraordinary, but it's something we see very commonly throughout the entirety of the rest of the world. There was a community-wide, mutually agreed upon lie that he did not violate these laws. And look, I mean, when I say avera gerer, like sin begats sin, is that what I mean? And also, a good deed begats good deed, right? You should know that too. It got so much more pronounced. It was in private, then it got public, then it got more public, then it got more public, then it got more public. And it was pretty public at first, but people aren't very knowledgeable about these laws, right? But by the time, like a few months before he was going to move on to well, not far enough away, but pastors knew. He vented his spleen giving this speech to the synagogue for 45 minutes, 3 times over to make sure he got everyone, right? Where he violated these laws in the most profound fashion that I couldn't imagine it. And I'm a very, very imaginative guy, right? There's this story, which is probably true, right? Of the Jews going into exile. The question was asked: Jews are a nation that live in exile. Why do we live in exile? We've lived in exile for about 2,000 years. What, little under, but why do we live in exile? So the straw that broke the camel's back was this thing called Kumtza Bar Kumtza. There was a guy called Kumtza. And another guy called Bar Kumtza, right? And the wrong one was invited to a party, and the person invited him, like, hated him, couldn't stand him, and he wanted to throw him out. He said, "Please don't do that. You'll embarrass me. You'll embarrass me in front of everyone," right? And he didn't care. Threw him out anyway, right? And he said that was the straw that broke the camel's back that brought this exile that's lasted for 2,000 years. Well, near enough, 2,000 years, right? And when we say exile, we're not just talking about the exile. We're talking about every bit of anti-Semitism that has ever happened from that day to this, right? Every bit, every Palestinian with a knife stabbing a pregnant woman, every naughty National Socialist from the every Nazi, every concentration camp, every single thing, it was as a result of that. But it doesn't seem like a big deal. And here's what I would suggest is the big deal, which is why I'm doing this right now. It wasn't that it wasn't just that this guy was thrown out of this party, right? It was that nobody gave a damn, right? Literally nobody gave a damn. They're like, and they saw the God's law, the will of God, torn up in front of their eyes. They saw the will of God being urinated on, in my estimation, and they couldn't care less. I mean, really, they couldn't care less. So I don't know if that's the same as where I live now. And look, I don't want to pretend where I live is any worse than anywhere else. I think this is a general malaise. There's lots of mutually agreed upon lies. I mean, look at COVID, right? Now, yes, COVID was obviously real, okay? I'm not saying COVID wasn't real, and I'm not saying the vaccine was ineffective. I'm saying there's a lot of things we don't know about it. When I was sick, I was shaking uncontrollably, right? I said to my wife, "Oh my God, am I going to be one of the died suddenly people? I don't want to be a died suddenly person." Like, if you don't know, before COVID, if you look up died suddenly, do a Google search, you get about once a month, maybe once every 2 months. After 2020, you get it like 2 or 3 times a day. So there's definitely an uptick. So I think... and a lot of what we know about COVID now wasn't what we were sold at the time. But I think there's a fair statement that we can all probably agree with, that is the response to COVID wasn't primarily to benefit us. I think it was primarily to benefit Pfizer. And I think we, certainly in Israel, became Pfizer's unpaid guinea pigs. Right, so, but we have a mutually agreed upon lie that we weren't duped. And we were duped, for God's sake, we were. And but people like their mutually agreed upon lie, which is why I think we have this mutually agreed upon lie in my local town, that Blackard, like, this guy didn't do what we all saw him do over and over and over again, right? No, that didn't happen, right? I think it did. So, do I think making this video will make people go, "Oh my God, oh my gosh, oh, I didn't realize"? No, of course it's not, right? I just think, having one lone voice saying maybe we shouldn't take an extended piss over the will of God might be ultimately beneficial for all around them. I don't know. Certainly hasn't helped me out any. Ain't that the fact, baby? Okay, fine. If I haven't said it already, like, share, subscribe, comment. So that is why we are delving into these laws, right? We're using this book, the Chafetz Chaim, Chafetz Chaim is a Torah, a biblical sage, not a biblical sage, a rabbi from a couple hundred years ago, codified these laws into a very, very good book that became like the cornerstone for this study. So this takes the laws and breaks them into daily work group. And we got it's by Rabbi Shimon Finkelman, who I do not know, and Rabbi Yitzhak Berkowitz, who I used to know, right? So let's see what they have to say today. We are up to day 8, right? Day 8, past history. Another area involving lashon hara, evil speech, is that of past history. It is forbidden to relate something that is about an individual's past, either the speaker or the listener considers shameful though in reality it is not shameful at all. So, isn't what I just did completely in contrivance of that? No. I'll tell you why. Because once something happens publicly, right, which we define as in front of 3 people, right, that's when we say it has a voice put on it, right? Once something happens publicly, at that point, it's fair game, essentially, right? I mean, at that when I say fair game, it's something that you can't cite these laws not to talk about, because you'll probably cite these laws not to talk about them in a somewhat disingenuous fashion, right? Which is, well, I've heard once or twice, right? But yeah, look, if everybody knows about something, right? So actually, now you have a much more interesting question in this day and age, where truth is very confused, right? And people don't know what truth is, right? So, for example, if you talk about Hunter Biden's laptop, right, where half the people think it was Russian disinformation, well, not probably a much more than half, right? And half the people think it was real, right? So, well, because it was. At what point would you be able to mention that, right? Obviously you mentioned to everyone. I mean, before it became public. Now it's public. You can talk about it because it's stupid not to, because we all know about it, right? So, but again, I think the question is, what type of transgression of these laws is there? There's something you can say called lashon hara, which is true statements, and another thing called motzi shemra. So that's really what we're splitting hairs about. Okay, our sages teach that at the place where a Baal Tshuva, that's somebody like me, right, who became religious after they weren't. Like when I was born, I wasn't religious, lived 19 or so years, then became religious. A place where people who became religious, like born again Jews, I guess is how you would describe them, stand perfect tzedikah, how would you say it? Righteous people. Those who have always been righteous cannot stand. So you have somebody who has always been a very pious person, and then you have somebody who used to be a bank robber and now has become a pious person, right? That's good, and you see that a lot, right? Especially ex-cons, people who did time when they were younger. Man, I can't tell you how many stories I've seen people have turned their life around, right? But it says somebody who was pious can never ever understand, can never reach the level of somebody who wasn't and decided to be, right? So where's he going with this? Thus, there is nothing shameful about being about you. Well, I wouldn't think so. Nevertheless, there's a forbidden to relate that someone is a returnee to Judaism, if either of the speaker or the listener looks down at such people. Really? I think if somebody looks down at them, you should give them a slap. I mean, I'm not advocating violence, right? I'm not advocating violence. Related laws are discussed in 12 days. Okay, so this is what it does. It gives you a little snippet of the law to give you a bite, and then you go into it slowly over time. Is this what, 180? Is it 180 days, right? Hang on, I'm looking. 180-day program. Fine. So let's go on to that was by Rabbi Berkowitz. Let's do the Rabbi Finkelman bit. Do whatever you can. That's always bad advice. Don't do whatever you can. That's always bad advice. A biblical scholar once posed the following question: if one has failed to concentrate while praying the something called the Shemona Esrei prayer, our central prayer, and he finds himself near its conclusion, right? Okay, We do this. Okay, we have this 19 blessing central prayer in Judaism that we do 3 times a day. That's very easy to rattle off without thinking about it. Very easy, right? People do it a lot. I've done it. Most people have done it, right? So you're doing it. So let's say you're praying and you get to you near the end and you realize, I've been in a different planet. I haven't been thinking about this at all. What is the approach he can inspire himself to pray? And he finds something that's going to do. With what approach can he inspire himself to pray the remainder of the prayer with proper concentration? The scholar offered the solution by way of a parable. I like a good parable. We all like a good parable. A young girl who was standing in a marketplace with a large basket of apples for sale. Suddenly a thief approached and began to snatch up the apples out of the basket. The girl became confused. Really? There's a thief stealing the apples, darling. It's not confusing, right? What's going on? He's stealing from you! Oh, okay. Fine. And stood helplessly, not knowing what to do. Someone who was watching from a distance called out, "Why are you standing still? Why are you? What are you waiting for? You should grab everything, just as he is grabbing. You should grab." Well, it's hard to think on on your feet in situations like that. Whatever you can get, it should still be yours. Well, I guess we're talking about a place where there's no police. Called like San Francisco. So, look, it's under $1,000. They're getting away with it. Leave them alone. And so it is regarding. So it is regarding prayer. Okay, if one was overcome with lethargy and mindlessness, they're being not nice to this fictional girl. I mean, she was like, this guy came in. Daydreaming at the start of prayer and suddenly finds themselves near the end without having grabbed any apples. This does not mean that they should give up and leave themselves with nothing. Rather, he should strive with all the inner strength to concentrate on the remaining blessings. And so it is exactly with these laws, the Lashon Hara. You stumbled this morning and you spoke the forbidden, then you should stand ready this afternoon to overcome the evil inclination and refrain from forbidden talk. And if you fell in the afternoon, nevertheless, strengthen yourselves to do battle once more. Surely God will help you succeed. For one who seeks to purify themselves is granted heavenly assistance. That's generally speaking true. Honestly, in this day and age, I'm just seeing like this complete darkness from God, right? The darkness that I've never really experienced before. So don't hold your breath for that. That's what I would suggest. But I think it's worth going back over that first one where I about saying relating past matters, right? Like, why is it okay for me to talk about this, everything that happened in my own personal life? Firstly, again, I'm not naming names, obviously, but secondly, you can't underestimate the power of publicity, right? You can't underestimate how strong a Jewish legal difference that makes, right? And again, people will often misquote these laws, say, "Oh no, you shouldn't say." See, here's the thing: a lot of people think these laws are based around if somebody says something that makes you feel bad. That's not true, right? Generally speaking, you shouldn't go out your way to make somebody feel bad. But if somebody's done kind of crappy things over and over again, and you mention it publicly that everybody knows about, right? And you mention them and you feel bad, that's not Lashon Hara. That's not evil. I mean, if you do it to oppress them, it is, right? But if you say, "Oh yeah, that happened," right? If you at that point, right? At that point, that's not Lashon Hara. That's not Lashon Hara because that feeling of shame that you have, that discomfort that you have, is a good thing that you don't want to discourage, right? That shows that you have a moral compass that you have gone off from. Look, it's very hard to tell, right? It's very, very hard to tell. In this case, it's much easier because everything what I'm talking about was so incredibly public without any question whatsoever. And quite frankly, it wasn't an isolated incident, right? It opened the doors to this complete permissibility to this evil talk. You know, I think, I can't remember who it was. Somebody said to me, I was trying to talk to them about it, said, yeah, we don't have a problem with lush and horror here. You're right, you didn't have a problem. Everybody does it. Everybody's fine with it. You should have a bloody problem, right? And that's essentially that's essentially the thing. So what I'm talking about is a very, very unique circumstance, right? Don't go out your way to hurt people with your speech, but don't be afraid of people being hurt by your speech because you are speaking non-pejoratively and truthfully, right? For some kind of reason other than just flapping your lips. I think that's a very important qualification to make. Fine. With that, we will move forward and we will continue our exploration tomorrow. Join me tomorrow as we go over more of these. We go over more of these wacky and wonderful laws to enrich your life once again. My name is Tzvi Lebetkin, the rabbi from another planet. Please like, share, and subscribe, and ring that little bell. Ring the little bell so you are notified when new videos drop.